Welcome back, everyone, to the Insomnia Sacred Trial as part of the True Silver Championship. This is the pro qualifier where we had 20 of the best players go into a big qualifying groups, and there are 7 spots available for these guys to go into. I'm Raven, and joining me to continue the evening, of course, is Lorinda. We just saw Eloise beat Hoy to move on to the next stage of the final top 8. And we've got the next match coming up, which is going to be XiXo versus StrifeCro.
Yeah, not too much to introduce in terms of how the players are. In this one, everybody knows who XiXo and StrifeCro are. What is interesting is that StrifeCro's got the more aggressive lineup. XiXo known for his aggro play in general. Obviously, he's terrific with everything. StrifeCro known for maybe a more ponderous style. A big fan of Grinder Mage, that sort of thing. He recently joked about his Grinder Mage because he went 0-6 in 2 tournaments in one day with that deck, and said that maybe it's time to do something else. He's got Tempo Mage today, and yeah, his lineup is actually more aggressive than XiXo, so a little bit of role reversal going on here. It might be interesting to see how they both cope, being possibly just a touch out their comfort zones.
Yeah, I think it's always a strong point when a player can actually acknowledge the fact that their standard or play style, or at least just preferences, actually just might not be performing how they need to. So then they have to switch it up a little bit, learn some new stuff, and then carry on. So it's always good when a player can signify that and actually change it up. So XiXo's lineup is going to be Warrior, Shaman, Druid, Warlock versus StrifeCro's Warrior, Shaman, Mage, and Warlock. And both players have actually banned out those Warrior decks. Something we discussed yesterday, saying that Warrior has probably by far most variation. So it's kind of awkward to build a lineup that can really beat Warrior per se, because there are so many different decks and so many different styles. So we are seeing it, as we said, banned out by both players.
Yeah, unfortunately, every single player in the top 8 has got Warrior, Shaman, and Warlock, but there's so many different builds of those. I think there's 3 Reno decks in this top 8 from memory, for instance. Obviously, Warrior is just everything. And then the Shaman, even that, there's 2 or 3 archetypes, and with those archetypes, there's tech choices. So even though it sounds like it's a bit of a mess, like, oh no, it's repetitive, it really isn't repetitive. There's so many different things going on in those decks.
Yeah, but before we go into this next game, we are just going to quickly check out the bracket to update you guys, as there are some games being played off stream. We do see Eloise did take down Hoy 3-2, as we just saw in the previous game. Chaki beat Powder, so he'll be moving on to the next round to go against Eloise. StrifeCro XiXo is the game that's coming up next, and as we mentioned earlier, Dog did beat Ball Control 3-2. So the winner of StrifeCro and XiXo will go versus Dog. And once these guys are into stage 2, they actually have 2 chances at taking one of these 3 qualifying spots. But should we be ready to go into the next match, which is going to be XiXo versus StrifeCro coming up right now. And this is going to be a big one, as the loser does go home and doesn't get the chance to play the True Silver Championship in the at least guaranteed 8 spots available. But they can still turn up to the LAN and just play in the Swiss anyway to have a chance at getting one of the other 8 spots that are available to make the top 16 in total.
Yeah, and everybody watching should turn up to the LAN as well. Blatant sellout there, but it's really good to go to Insomnia. There's so much going on, and you get the entry to the Hearthstone for free with your BYOC ticket. So you don't have to be a big name to enter, and you will get to play several games of Swiss. You'll probably get to play against a big name at some point, and you'll get to have 3 days of solid entertainment. As we're actually into the game now, we can stop the Talkstone and get on with the Hearthstone.
Yeah, it's going to be StrifeCro's Tempo Mage versus XiXo's Shaman with that Fire Elemental. So, again, Fire Elemental feeling like a bit more of a tech choice a lot of the time. Or just, you want to go that one step a little bit heavier. But the Hex, obviously, we find that it's more of a mid-range variant overall, whereas StrifeCro's Tempo Mage, I think, is at least relatively standard.
Yeah, and just to look at the pace of play of the 2 players, XiXo doesn't like to hang around. He played that and hit end turn before StrifeCro could even process that he'd played a card, I think. And we're going to see a lot of StrifeCro taking his time and XiXo playing very quickly. That's how both players enjoy to play the game.
Yeah, and mirror images coming out from StrifeCro early on to just stem the tide that Shaman can put out, because even though the list looks is more of a mid-range list in general, Shaman still has the same opening no matter what deck you're playing, right? You can still go Tunnel Trog into Golem, to Feral Spirits, for example, or, one of those options, and it can still put a lot of pressure on early. So StrifeCro just wanting to slow XiXo down there.
Yep, and StrifeCro just developing board, feeling that what else can you do really? There's no point killing these guys. He is the sort of player, this is against his natural style. He would have wanted to ping there and save things. Just being that grinder mage mentality, look after your card advantage. But he's playing this new deck. He will have practiced this a lot. He practices a lot of stuff on stream in front of people. I think Sottle was saying yesterday about that's how Life Coach does it. I think StrifeCro is very much the same. And those two are pretty unique in the Hearthstone world for that.
Yeah, it's really a joy to actually get an insight to the player's mind in terms of play-by-plays and exactly what they're thinking about on turn. Every single turn. We can only do so good of a job as casters, but when you actually hear the player in the situation themselves, as those cards are getting all kinds of crazy for us, we'll just be sorting that out right now, guys. Don't worry too much, as we can still see the cards, and that's all that really matters. The ping they're using to clear up the totem, just to guard off and make the make it not as easy for XiXo to clear up both of these minions. So not looking too bad for StrifeCro at the moment, although I do feel with two things from below in hand and XiXo being able to hero power twice so far, that's really going to come into a huge impact turn soon.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he decides to play with those things from below, whether he holds them back to put them down in one go, maybe just before Flame Strike possibility turn, or whether he does this, just occupies board and asks continuous questions rather than a burst question in one go. And he feels that his hand probably isn't powerful enough to ask the burst question. He needs to do something right now just to keep the board under control.
Yeah, and the thing from below putting quite a big threat onto the board that StrifeCro doesn't have a fantastic answer for. Excuse me, he has Arcane Blast, who cares? So you can actually Arcane Blast ping both the Mana Worm. I decided to miss that card on the left. And yeah, it's not too bad of a clear up here. The Squire's going to get some work done eventually, but StrifeCro is looking in at least a reasonable position at the moment.
Yeah, that Arcane Blast showing why this Tempo Mage is such a good deck right now. It's the sum of its parts are so much better than each individual card. Words are so difficult at times. Each individual card in the deck to look at isn't particularly special, but things like that happen where you just kill a guy for 1 mana.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty nice when combined with some spell powers. It does gain the double spell power from from any spell time it's cast. So XiXo just getting his 1/1 pinged off there. StrifeCro looks like he's going to coin into the Water Elemental, and this is huge, as this is a card that can lock out the Doomhammer. And we see XiXo there saying, nope, this isn't really the most natural hex target you see, in general. But when you've got the Doomhammer equipped, damn right you want to hex that guy and lock out the ability for him to just make the Doomhammer quite irrelevant for a while. But what do you actually think of XiXo holding on for that second charge of Doomhammer?
I think that's okay. I think he realizes that there's no immediate path to victory, so just hitting your opponent for 2 here and 2 there probably isn't that great. He's going to need that Doomhammer to actually clear up some minions if he's going to get this board to stay. And this is more interesting to me. He's actually choosing to use the Rockbiter now, and which wastes 1 point of damage but protects his own life total, because this mage can do so much damage from hand that most of the time you would just double hit that Mana Worm, that Azure Drake, if that wasn't a burn deck you're facing. But taking 8 against mage is actually a problem now.
Yeah, it is. It's quite a lot to stack up, and especially when, as you said, there's a lot of burning hand in these mage decks, so it's not as if you can take the damage and hide behind taunt minions a lot of the time. Do you see the thing from below? Soaking up the fireball there. So XiXo is, as we can tell pretty heavily from early on, he's playing the board control game here, as playing the more mid-range variant of Shame, and he does start getting a lot of value from that Thunderbuff hero power. Thunderbuff pretty much a 7 mana card, more than anything, as you don't often play it just on curve. So XiXo cashing in on that immediate value, and he has a pretty strong follow-up. He could just kill StrifeCro next turn with that second draw of the Rockbiter or even the Fire Elemental damage.
Right, and this all goes back to XiXo's ordering and the way he's planned the game, in that he got that second thing from below out as a reasonable size threat, just the sort of threat that StrifeCro needed to deal with. And StrifeCro would have been aware that that may not be the biggest threat, but he also couldn't let it live. And now this Thunderbluff is going to take over the game, and because of the ordering of XiXo, it's going to be much harder to deal with this card than it would have been if he just had a Fireball in his hand, obviously.
Yeah, I think the only potential like realistic out here would have been like Flame Strike into Arcane Blast, and XiXo knows that. And if that doesn't exist, and there's no like random Frost Nova knocking around or something, StrifeCro's going to have a very rough time. The second Fireball not going to be enough. He can kill off the totem though, but that's still 3 for the rest. That was still 11 represented just on board. But we can see the Rock Bite is going to finish that up pretty soon. Yeah. Oh, even more with the Hero Power, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like 1 million damage. I hadn't even bothered counting it, I must admit. It's just like
actually 1 million,
not needed right now.
Yeah. So XiXo is going to take the first game versus StrifeCro with his mid-range Shaman, and again, just very interesting to see multiple players here not taking the aggro Shaman route. That's become quite expected in tournaments as of late. Last Hero Standing and Conquest, as we saw, even in DreamHack, there being a fair few, at least a few sweeps of aggro Shaman taking wins there, like 3-0 for example. So we have Hoy and XiXo taking the more different styles of Shaman than we're used to.
Yeah, and we're just saying, I mentioned it earlier, we're seeing these aggressive decks, or these fast mid-range decks, if you like, just getting a little tiny bit greedier and greedier. And that's, again, why something like Dragon Warrior has become so prevalent, because it's taking advantage of these greedy decks and saying, nope, I'm gonna go underneath you. I'm going to kill you before you actually get established in the game. And I think what we'll see soon is some of these strange tech choices or bigger decks maybe throttling back a bit on these mid-range threats, but for now that's working out really well for these guys.
Yeah, and we are going into game 2, which is of course going to be XiXo Shaman again, as this is Last Hero Standing, and StrifeCro locking in the sort of the sort of go-to deck when you want to beat Shaman of almost any variety, which is the Zoo. But AoE from XiXo's version can actually cause some issues here.
Yeah, and I mentioned that StrifeCro was playing more aggressively than usual. This Zoo deck has an Argent Horse Rider in it and a Soulfire.
Yeah, so this sounds very similar to the list that Neyman ran to finish first in his group. And we just saw that the idea pretty much is he went slightly more aggressive with a lot of his decks, just like a one notch. And then that extra bit is enough to actually finish the games earlier than expected and earlier than everyone's used to, because I think something that's quite undervalued is the more popular a deck, the better people get at playing against it, right? Yes. It becomes very, very natural to play against standard Zoo. And then when suddenly this Zoo list has like points of extra burst you're not used to, then you have to be like, oh, okay, now I'm what I normally play around. I kind of have to play around a bit more now and change my style up a little bit differently. And that can actually, win or lose games a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's something that happened with Hunter versus Freeze Mage back in the day. Freeze Mage was thought to be a gigantic favourite at one point, and slowly but surely the percentages got towards 50% as the Hunter players knew what was going on, and the Freeze Mage had no chance to adapt. And yeah, playing, like you say, either changing your play style or forgetting to adapt, which I know that sounds silly, but no matter who you are, if you've got to play 9 matchups against 9 matchups, that's 81, plus all the archetypes, there's going to be some matchups you haven't played so much with 1 or 2 tunes, so people will make mistakes against slight changes to decks.
Yeah, and even though the deck lists are revealed, that can actually cause players to play maybe suboptimally at certain points. XiXo will know this is more aggressive deck, so maybe you'll play slightly more defensive to try and lock out potential burst damage. But we do see StrifeCro with a pretty nice opening, the Flame Imp coin into Argent Squire to really challenge the board, but XiXo drawing into the Totem Golem was pretty nice as well. Just being able to keep the board pretty even at this point.
Yep, and StrifeCro here has got a fairly messy looking turn. He only has obviously that 2 mana, so the natural play is to play the Juggler and put both of your minions into the 3/4, but that just feels so bad. If your opponent has any sort of buff and they're playing Shaman, they probably do, they can just take down that Flame Juggler, which is kind of a big part of your offense, especially with that Forbidden Ritual in hand. But if you want to kill the thing with the Soulfire, you don't really want to lose any of those 3 cards from your hand, and you waste some mana. So this is a really messy looking turn. He may just choose to take out the 1/1.
Yeah, it's kind of tough, isn't it? There's nothing that feels too great. It looks like he's going for the Soulfire onto the Golem just to really try and wrestle the board away from XiXo here, as he does choose to take out the 1/1, of course. I think if you were killing the Totem Golem, you were always killing the 1/1 in that situation.
Yes.
And this is what Zoo generally does anyway. You battle for the board, and as long as you can hold the board, you win a lot of the time because you trade up so well versus almost any other deck.
Yeah, you keep your opponent off the board, and you have a magic button that allows you to refill your hand as well. And that's one of the reasons that it works so well in Warlock. A lot of these cards are available or similar in other classes, but the reason it works in Warlock is because you can go a lot more all in, because you have that life tap hero power that if things go wrong, you just try again, and then again, and then again.
Yeah, there's even playstyles versus some of the slow matchups where you just favour drawing over actually playing minions, or at least playing as many minions per turn a lot of the time, just to be able to keep up with resources with your opponent. And StrifeCro going for the Dark Peddler here and a couple of options, but Power Overwhelming is always the standout option for Zoo, and most just Warlock decks in general. But you can get some use out of some of the other cards. I think we saw Gara take the Zealous Initiate yesterday when he had a couple of options as well. So definitely something to think about there. But StrifeCro does go for the standard one, which is Power Overwhelming, so we can clear up the Taunt Rock.
Yeah, I think it's a good practice to just take your time looking at those options rather than just insta-picking the Power Overwhelming. Like you say, sometimes there's just a better option available to you that isn't entirely obvious. And mana not working out well for him this turn, though, but going to have to waste another mana. Going to be okay, though. Doomguard next turn will probably take over the game to some degree.
Yeah, I think being able to just at least go into a Doomguard turn with only one card you're going to draw into is going to be pretty nice, as we can see at least. XiXo doesn't really have too many answers to Doomguard readily available to him. Could go wide this turn with Feral Spirits if he just wants multiple targets, which will allow him to totem up, which does reduce the cost of the Thing from Below. So I kind of like this, instead of just playing Thing from Below to just die to anything that's played out. Actually just hero powering and sort of trying to bank on that more impactful turn with a cheaper thing later on.
Yeah, this also gives him the choice next turn to go wide or to just kill something, depending what happens. So it gives you the most options available, and if one thing pro players like, it's options. That's how they get to outplay their opposition. So next turn, now he can either do the Thing plus the Feral Spirit, or he can do the Fire Elemental, and he can react to what goes on. And he's going to need to, because what's going on is he's getting pummeled by a 5/7 demon.
Yeah, and actually, the way obviously StrifeCro chose to line up those attacks guarded all of the health on the Doomguard. So straight off the bat, XiXo would really need a Hex to just deal with it in one go. So yeah, this is a tough one for XiXo. He could go for the Feral Spirit into Manatide, which would further reduce the cost of the Thing from Below, but just not really put enough power on the board. See, the weapon of choice is going to be the Fire Elemental, just to clear off the 2/2 there. And, at least set up something to be able to do some damage to this Doomguard.
Yeah, and we're seeing the power of the magic button come into play now. StrifeCro probably just going to be able to spend all of his mana, keep things alive, and keep control of that board. If you keep control of that board, the Shaman deck doesn't really have that many ways to burst you down. And so, although this is going to be a huge turn for XiXo, that being said.
Yeah, this is kind of nuts. Yeah, this is good. Going for the Manatide, getting the full value out. You can Manatide, Hero Power, and play 2 Things from Below. So I heard 1 mana 5/5 taunts are pretty reasonable in Hearthstone, and we are going to see the power of them now. The only unfortunate thing for XiXo is that one of those is going to die to a 5/1 Doomguard that is already putting his shift for the day, and now he's just doing a bit of overtime, being able to kill off that 5/5.
Yeah, it feels really bad, man, losing your 5/5 to a 5/1. But if you want the other one to do any work, that was a sacrifice he had to make. The other options were just play a bunch of nothing and basically end up having to make the same play in an even worse position next turn. This gave him the chance of StrifeCro possibly not having a buff. But when you draw 2 cards a turn as a Zoo deck, you're probably going to pick up a buff.
Yeah, and we did see, as you said, the power of Zoo, just being able to... That should have been double minion trade. That's what XiXo was planning on, but it ended up just being able to use that abusive. And yeah, it's just a frustration when playing against Zoo. They can trade up probably one of the best decks, if not the best deck in the game, to trade up minions. And XiXo now sort of waning a little bit on the options. He does have Feral Spirit into Totem Golem, of course, can use the Rockbiter to clear up potentially the Flame Imp, but once he's done this, that is everything. I think he's just like, this is what I've got. I'm pretty much going to have to make this board work to win the game. And if I can't, then I'm just going to run out of resources, as you said, because of that magic 2 mana button at the top of StrifeCro's game.
However, XiXo does have a magic totem that's kind of balancing things out at the moment, keeping you up to date. So this is going to be an absolutely crucial turn or two here, as StrifeCro has a pretty sad set of options.
Yeah, Finley is normally a pretty good option overall, but as you said, when we kind of, StrifeCro will be wanting to be able to live tap to keep up with the resource management because XiXo does have the Mana Tide Totem. This is kind of awkward. Bloodset, of course, are normally great when against a weapon class, but not when it knocks 1 durability off an 8 durability weapon, potentially. Not going to make too much impact.
Yeah, he may be considering how many more times he can actually realistically live tap this game. He's down to something like 15, 13, that order. Okay, 17. So he has decided to go for the taunt. That makes a lot more sense. If he'd been a little bit lower, then Finley may have been a viable option, just because the number of realistic taps comes down to a very low number. But yeah, he's high enough that he's going to tap quite a lot more this game yet.
Yeah, he's got plenty of time, especially with his opponent only on 1 card. So just setting up there that, setting up favourable trades going forward with this Voidwalker and Goldshire Footman there, just trading the Abusive in. To put the Feral Spirit into 1, this totem could be huge.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. The 1-1 definitely going to help versus Zoo, of course, being able to actually attack other than some of the other totems, but even a potential second Mana Tide would have been pretty grim for StrifeCro, as then that becomes 3 cards a turn, which is very difficult to keep up with even as the Zoo player.
XiXo knows there's very, very few minions left. I think we might, there's very, very few minions in StrifeCro's deck worthy of a Hex. He's used his 1 Doom Guard, he's playing no Sea Giants. So XiXo there, his play looks kind of strange, but actually there's just no other viable targets. There might be 1 more Dark Iron Dwarf or something of any size at all. Maybe a Councilman, obviously, but he thought there, well, you know what, this thing's producing 1/1s and they're hurting me. I'm just going to get rid of it right away.
Yeah, and we see XiXo actually draw into the card that will very well potentially win him the game, as he has a pretty wide board as it is, and then going Thunderbluff Hero Power every turn is going to stack up too quickly for the Warlock to deal with, as Zoo is not known for its AoE options, unless there's some very interesting tech choices in the list. But XiXo's going to be feeling pretty good about his following turn right about now, with 2 totems already on board that can attack this turn, even has a Flame Tongue. So why the hell not at this point? And we might even see StrifeCro just concede, as I don't see a good way to crawl back from this situation.
Yeah, it's looking more than grim for him here. I can't see how you can possibly get out of this yet.
Yeah, there we go. The sheer power of Thunderbluff Hero Power forces your opponent to concede at that point. And XiXo looking pretty strong with this Shaman deck so far, going 2-0 versus StrifeCro. And I believe StrifeCro just has his own Shaman left.
Yeah, it's an aggro Shaman.
Yeah, which is the deck he decided to go last with. He could have queued his own Shaman into, obviously, XiXo's list, but chose to the Warlock for the better matchup, and now he's pretty much all in on this deck, as these guys do not mess around, going in what could potentially be the last game if XiXo takes this one for a victory of 3-0 over StrifeCro.
Yeah, just a reminder, it's last hero standing, so that means that StrifeCro will have queued up the deck he thought was most likely to win last time. That's not always the case when it comes to Conquest, but in last hero standing it's pretty much always correct to do that. There are exceptions, so he would definitely have believed that was a better chance, and rightly so, because unlike Hunter, the slower Shaman tends to have the edge. It tends to be able to match the faster Shaman early in, and then over the period of time its bigger guys just do the work.
Yeah, Finley coming out from StrifeCro early on. Both players have a reasonable opening with Totem Golem and the Flame Tongue Totem coming out from StrifeCro over the next couple of turns potentially. But XiXo can answer the old coin into Totem Golem into 1-drop play, which is hyper standard for any Shaman as long as that 1-drop. And even sometimes when it is, Tunnel Trog.
Yeah, obviously getting that Druid power with the Doomhammer does lead to a lot of damage coming in sooner rather than later. So definitely gives him a chance here, as does this pretty terrific start. But XiXo's hand looks like it should be able to fend off most things for a while here.
Yeah, being able to play, buff the Totem Golem up to be able to kill the other Totem Golem straight off is actually pretty nice. He did favour it over the Argent Squire. But we can see that a Flame Tongue can actually deal with this, but it will leave the Flame Tongue just on the board on its own. So kind of an awkward situation. The only other real option is Hero Power trade here, and that also doesn't feel too great either.
Yeah, and he's looking at the Argent Squire, which basically, I guess it gives him the same option again next turn. It makes his Flame Tongue better, etc. So this will be okay. He'll be able to Flame Tongue now and Hero Power down the thing. But unfortunately for him, Feral Spirits puts paid to that idea to some degree.
Yeah, Feral Spirit and the trade into the Finley as well. So XiXo, identifying that he doesn't really need to just a random 4 damage to face at this point in the game. What he does need to do is bring down the board of StrifeCro. And this is being played very similar to the way that the Aggro Shaman Mirror is played, where both players just play for the board up until one of them just completely loses it, and then the game just ends very swiftly after that.
Yeah, and exactly what we were saying earlier, really. XiXo and StrifeCro have basically the same hand right now, give or take, in terms of how the cards function. But what will probably happen is that XiXo's deck will carry on producing big threats, and StrifeCro's will slowly but surely run out. And because XiXo's on 28 life, it's going to be an uphill battle for StrifeCro from here.
Yeah, although StrifeCro, with all these cards in hand now, he has the Doomhammer equipped. He can clear off the 2 dogs and clear off the totem if he really wants, but he might actually just go face. Because he has 2 Lava Bursts and also hero-powered enabled Doomhammer. So that's going to be 6 a turn if he wants to. And then 10 damage from the 2 Lava Bursts and the Flame Tongue. So I think StrifeCro will really have to be thinking about how he can end this game and how much damage he's actually got in total and how much he needs to draw into. Because if he continues to just trade with minions going forward, it's just going to become too efficient, as you said. The XiXo's list is going to start putting out threats that are just too big to deal with.
And look at this. This is interesting. XiXo's decided that a 1-mana Argent Squire is better than a random 2-mana minion.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable, especially with the Doomhammer equipped. That's a very awkward hit with the Doomhammer if that's the case. And yeah, I think that's pretty nice. Divine Shield being more valuable than a couple of extra stats.
Yeah.
As it soaks up potentially 1 hit of infinite damage.
So yeah, just felt a bit unnatural, that's all. I'm not saying it was wrong, just an unusual thing for a player to spot so quickly as well. It's like, actually, this is just better. Like, everyone else would be like, well, you'd want 2-mana minion rather than 1-mana minion, surely. But no, XiXo instantly avoiding that trap. And like you say, that Divine Shield worth more in this situation than the extra stat that might just die anyway.
Yeah, I'd really like to see StrifeCro go face at this point, because with his hand, I just don't see how he can really plan around, trying to grab the board back. He could have just Lava Burst down the 4-3, the 4-5, sorry, if he wanted to. But he's just got such an aggressive hand. I think he just needs to go for it at this point.
Yeah, go for it and maybe try to draw a Rockbiter weapon or something to get that final bit of damage through. But he's decided that he thinks he's got enough left to still be able to maintain the board for a turn or two and challenge XiXo to actually set up a board. Because XiXo's made no real plays at the board, and maybe he feels the Master of Evolution is a bit of a tell that XiXo hasn't got much in his hand in terms of board management.
Yeah, and we see XiXo equip his own Doomhammer now, clear up the Ardent Squire, as we see just the value of the Divine Shield there, soaking up one of the hits. But XiXo does have Rockbiter in hand, so he's getting to the point pretty quickly where he can just straight up kill StrifeCro if he doesn't do much on the board this turn.
Yeah, and those hexes will enable him to stop any minion push. So yeah, StrifeCro, like you've been pushing for a couple of turns, apparently needs to just really smash some face damage right now. And I think that's what he's going to do. I'll be incredibly surprised if he doesn't.
Yeah, the value of 6 damage going into a Argent Squire, there's playing for the board, and then there's being crazy. And StrifeCro definitely doesn't strike me as the crazy type, so he's just going to put the 6 damage there. Put XiXo to 20, so he does have effectively 6 from the Doomhammer next turn, an additional 10. So could potentially sell lethal over 2 turns. If you can maybe just draw a tiny bit more damage.
Yeah, and XiXo's got a whole chunk in his own right as well here. So he'll be trying to get a Taunt Totem just to slow proceedings down. He'll be terrified of a Rockbiter weapon. And now he's got to decide if he wants to put this Flame Tongue out there. I think he will. Push some damage, and he knows that StrifeCro can't let this lot live unless StrifeCro kills him. So I like this.
Yeah, just setting up a lot of damage. He's got 10 next turn just from the Rockbite, as long as the taunt doesn't come down. And then just so much more on board. He needs 2 damage to be able to survive, to win. Potentially 3 if StrifeCro hero powers.
Rockbiter here. Is that lethal? That's lethal, right?
Yes, it's going to be lethal. So StrifeCro going face last turn, and really interesting that StrifeCro actually held off earlier on and chose to kill the 4-5 with the weapon and double tank, put himself in quite a dangerous situation. But as I said earlier, with 2 Lava Bursts, it's all about just going for your outs and setting up potential lethal there. So StrifeCro does actually win a game and come back into this set 1-2 versus XiXo so far. Finally toppling XiXo Shaman, as he's going to have Druid and Warlock to fall back on.
Yeah, he's got the Yogg Druid that we've seen quite a lot of in the last 2 weeks, I want to say. And also he has a Zoo with double Sea Giant, Gormok, a double Doomguard. Sorry, one Sea Giant, double Doomguard, Craze Alchemist, all the techie Warlock stuff.
Yeah, so, no surprise is XiXo's going to lock in the Zoo, as this is probably the best matchup you're going to get. And yeah, it's looking pretty standard so far. He does have the Flame Imp for turn 1, which always feels good. But StrifeCro has a pretty good opening hand himself with the double 1-drop if he wants. And the key Tuskar Totemic, to me, one of the most fearsome cards in the game. And one that may well be needed for a nerf at some point.
I think it'll probably just get the treatment for something like Implosion, which is shut our eyes and hope it goes away in 2 years' time. But yeah, it is a card that is very, very powerful, but I think you just nerf it by printing 1 or 2 more totems and all is well. It wasn't particularly busted when there was the Vitality totem in the game.
Yeah.
So you just print 1 or 2 useless totems that nobody plays, and that'll probably be nerf enough.
Yeah, even just like, maybe not useless, but just one low impact totem, which means the high roll is less likely to happen, which is all you're bothered about. So yeah, it's going to be interesting how that one pans out, but StrifeCro has a lot of options. He has 2 1-drops, and then the Flame Juggler and the Totem Golem in hand, as well as the coins. So what do you like here? Do you want to go wider with the 1-drops, even though you know if you play the Trog it's just going to die to the Flame Imp, but then you bank on the Argent Squire clearing off the Flame Imp and following up with a 2-drop? Or do you want to go big with like the Totem Golem, for example, to just directly challenge the Flame Imp?
Instinctively, I think I just want to directly challenge it, but this is a really difficult turn. Obviously, you want to buff your Trog, but that's the least of your concerns. You've got to get this board. This matchup, if you don't get the board as the Shaman, you lose the game rapidly. And so I think my play is to challenge it, but I can see why he's taking his time here. This is not easy. Just playing Argent Squire, not even coining is an option as well here.
Yeah, I'm just going to get the 2 1-drops out and just, guarantee almost that he can kill the Flame Imp at least next turn. The Crazed Alchemist there, going to flip the Flame Imp around, and suddenly that looks kind of awkward for StrifeCro, as his whole turn was set up to be able to kill this guy, and a Flame Imp, even at 1-3, is going to get some work done.
Yeah, very much so. What a great use of the Alchemist there. I think maybe the reasoning for turn 1 goes, if I'm going to coin out my Golem, my Trog becomes kind of useless anyway, at least in the medium term. So I might as well just coin out the Trog in the first place and have it be useless that way instead. At least it then would have occupied the board, normally against a guy who doesn't Craze Alchemist and flip and do really nasty things to you.
Yeah, kind of unexpected to be able to deal with the Craze Alchemist there, as XiXo does drop the Imp Gang Boss, so this is a really good setup for that Councilman as well. So if you have something that can actually generate tokens, as well as follow up with additional minions from hand, the Councilman actually gets kind of ridiculous and is a threat that StrifeCro will not be able to ignore.
Yeah, Imp Gang Boss is completely crazy as well. Literally, this game is almost all about how many things can you get on the board. I don't mean things from below, just how many minions can you produce. The size of them obviously matters, but just having more minions than your opponent when you can both buff things and remove things is such a huge thing. So Imp Gang Boss producing more minions is very, very important.
Yeah, so what you're saying, Lorinda, is like size doesn't always matter, but it's just volume.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, good to know, Lorinda. Good to know. We are going to go with the Totem Golem now, coming down, and yeah, it's just as stronger boards you can really represent to XiXo.
Yep. And this double Direwolf, it feels like it's going to be very important how he manages it here, because he's going to be able to get 3 or 4 minions down. He's going to be able to buff 1 minion twice, obviously, if he spaces things out in the right way. He could just get it into a position like now. He could just buff the Imp Gang Boss for instance and take out the Totem Golem. I didn't expect him to do it, but that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like normally you try and use the Direwolf to get like repeat effects on the turn you play it by using like a lot of 1/1 tokens from Forbidden Ritual, for example, and just keep trading them in. But that was just too clean of a trade. The Imp Gang Boss is still alive, so we'll generate at least 1 more token, and then you set up quite a wide board that really StrifeCro doesn't really have a good way to deal with this.
Yeah, it may well come down to the thing that you never want to do as a shaman, where you just play the Doomhammer and start hitting minions with it over and over. And whilst that can work occasionally in taking down one big minion, if you're clearing a whole wide board with it, it tends to work out really badly for you.
Yeah, especially because Zoo has the ability to just refill the board. So, you take out 2 minions with the 2 swings of the Doomhammer, they're probably just going to play 2 more next turn, and you're taking damage to face while they're not. So, being able to just keep up with that life tap is huge in this matchup. And Defender of Argus is definitely a strong card on this turn, I think. Combined with it being able to squeeze in the Possessed Villager, although there is a chance that XiXo might actually just value the getting the Councilman down now as on a relatively safe turn, and then do Defender of Argus things next turn. But if he's hovering over the Possessed Villager, there is no chance we're going to see the Councilman come out afterwards.
Yep. And this is a hand where you want to be precisely XiXo to play it as optimally as possible, I think. He would have played this hand probably more times than anybody in the world. So...
it's looking pretty good, as StrifeCro doesn't really have a good way to clear, and this is why, this is one of the reasons why Zoo performs so well. You can actually lock down the early game of the Shaman with all the potential trade-up mechanics from the Zoo list, and the Shaman just can't really come back and just do enough damage. Like, they have to go off to such a quick start, and the Zoo kind of has to whiff a lot of the time to be able to, deal with it. And we see now the Councilman's second Possessed Villager and the Power Overwhelming, so even if something huge came out from StrifeCro, the ability is there already to just kill it.
Yeah, one other thing the Shaman can do is maybe hide his 7/7 behind a Feral Spirits or something like that. But this is just a hopeless case now. I think we'll see StrifeCro give it up very, very soon. Maybe one more turn.
Yeah, we see the Doomhammer come down, clear off the first part of the Possessed Villager, leaving the Demon up and just going face, as he seems to be like StrifeCro's in a very similar situation as the previous game, where he's just hit the point where he's like, okay, I need a very exact combination of cards to win this game, but it's going to be too late, as XiXo goes straight into the Doom Guard. Did he just have lethal anyway with the
I think he was one off. He needed to draw any minion or any buff or any direct damage, which is, I think, any Warlock card.
Yeah, pretty much any Warlock card, especially when you can tap, is easily enough there. And XiXo does take the win over StrifeCro, so I believe he'll be through to the next round as we
he'll play against Dog in the second of our semi-finals later tonight, but the first one's going to be Chucky versus Eloise.
Yeah, that's going to be kind of awesome to see. Chucky with a lot of recent success, and obviously Eloise playing some pretty cool iterations of her own decks. That's going to be awesome, but that's going to be coming up pretty soon. We do have the bracket ready, just to refresh your memory on what's been going on so far today, guys. As we saw the first game of the evening, Eloise going 3-2 over Hoy, moving on to the next round. Chucky beating Powder off stream 3-2. XiXo we just saw perform pretty well and get the 3-1 win over StrifeCro, and Dog beat Ball Control earlier today in the 3-2. So as we said, it's going to be Eloise versus Chucky, XiXo versus Dog. The winners of these games actually guarantee themselves a spot in the eight sort of man invitational section of the True Silver Championship at the end of August, and the losers will actually play each other after for that last one spot available. So at least top 4, we're going to see 3 going to Insomnia and 1 not. So it's going to be really cool to see the tense games where all these players will know there's only one of them that isn't going to make it, which feels pretty rough. But before we do get into the next game, we're just going to go to a quick break while we set up the players. So don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be back soon.